Hey guys, it's Carl Brown from GuitarLessons365.com. Today I've got a video that I think is probably one of the most important videos that I'll ever do because I get the question a lot. I need help building a practice routine. How do I practice? Or they're asking maybe how I approach practicing. So this video is going to kind of explain how I view it, how I would put together my own practice routine. It might not work for everybody, just like we're all different types of players. We're all different types of levels. We have different goals. I'm trying to give you enough concepts and ways of tackling certain challenges here and how to organize your practice that will benefit most players, hopefully. So let's talk about this a little bit before we start getting into actual little technical advice about how to break down technical challenges or whatever, which I'll show you a little bit of that in this video too. Let's talk about actually the structure of the practice and just mentally what you need to be thinking about. First of all, you need to formulate a plan. Now, this means you need to know before going into your practice session. I don't care if it's 20-minute practice session, 2 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. I don't know how you can do that, but anyway, if you whatever you can put into it on a daily basis, you need to organize what you're going to be doing. I know most players, they get frustrated. They're like, how do I get to this different level that this my favorite player does or whatever? I think most players that excel on the instrument rather quickly know what their weaknesses are and they kind of can systematically tackle them. The way you do that is you think about your practice session before you actually practice. So literally write out what you're going to do that day. Now, I suggest doing that probably not when you're practicing. Say maybe from the previous day's practice session when it's over, you figured out, okay, I was having trouble keeping my bends in tune or doing that one lick in that Metallica song or whatever. You write those down and say, I'm going to practice that. And maybe if you've had ideas of like, if I hold my pick like this while you're practicing, jot it down because the next day you're going to forget it when you can experiment with different pick angles or whatever. So any ideas you have, write them down. It's like a practice log. And then you come up with a practice routine for the next day. So you know when you go in there what you're going to do. And you can think about it before you even get there. All right, so do that and understand that everything is, it's going to be fluid. You're going to keep everything, the goals are constantly changing. So understand that. Now I'll have a PDF for you guys that will kind of summarize what I'm talking about in this video. So make sure you grab that as well. You'll see the link in the description and it'll help you kind of summarize what this video talks about. All right. Everything else we have, when you create a practice routine, you're going to create different practice areas. So we can have like a technique session, theory and improvisation, or a theory and ear training section, a section of improvisation, or just being creative with the instrument. If you're somebody who wants to write music for the guitar, not everybody does. Some people just want to play music they love that they hear on the radio. That's fine. But if you do want to write, you got to practice writing. It's a muscle just like anything else that you got to develop. You get better at it the more you do it, and it gets less intimidating too. And then you have things where you can tackle where you actually play music that you love every practice session. I think that's very, very important. So these are different areas that you need to organize and allot a certain amount of time to. If you see, if you have had 2 hours today, how much I'm going to do. Have a little 2-hour practice session sample routine that I'll put on that PDF too. It kind of shows you how you can summarize what I talk about in this video into one practice routine. So we're gonna another idea that I want to talk about before we get into the actual practice routine itself is to practice throughout the day. Now that doesn't mean that you practice 20 minutes before breakfast, 20 minutes after breakfast, 20. You can do it all at once, which is fine, or you can actually practice an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening. My suggestion is to play, even if it's just for a few minutes, as early as possible in the day. Now, I learned this when I went to a conservatory when I was a teenager. And it's like, classes start at 8, but you're going to practice 2 hours before you show up at class. Why? They wanted you to be a musician all day. They wanted you to be connected with it. Because when you practice for the rest of the day, you probably know that you're kind of running it through your mind a lot, what you did. You're kind of tweaking what you did. You're almost still practicing. You're staying connected with it. Now, if you don't do that, if you go to sleep, you wake up the next day and you don't practice till late in the day, you spend a large part of the day not being a guitar player or not really actively thinking about it. Now, some people, that's all they can do, and that's fine. But if you can get anything in as early as possible in the day, even if it's just 15 minutes, I think you'll see a big difference. And the one thing that I touched on there, which was called mental practicing, you're mentally seeing yourself practicing playing these exercises. I probably have most of my technical breakthroughs of how to play something, how to pick something, or how the angle of the pick, or if I'm doing classical stuff, how to most of it comes away from the guitar, just when I'm thinking about it, because I'm not hindered by or intimidated by having an instrument in my hand. I can think out the issues that I'm having a lot better. And then most of the time when I pick up an instrument after that and I try to do what I have been thinking about in my mind the entire time, it works much better than just sitting there and trying to just do it over and over again for 2 hours. So I think that's another thing, just going through the day, thinking about your little technical exercises you do, pieces of music that challenge you, theory concepts, ear training, everything. The people who get the best at it are the ones who are doing it all day, mostly in their mind, not on the guitar only. All right, so let's talk about the actual practice. You guys have probably seen my stretching videos where my first one, it's a pretty popular video on YouTube. If you type in guitar stretches, it'll be one of the first things that you'll see. It really kind of details how I stretch my hands out before I practice. Now, I do that before I practice. I also do it after I practice. So it's good to kind of, and sometimes in the middle of it. You want to play guitar for you don't want to play guitar for a brilliant 5 years and then your hands kind of shut down on you. You want to keep your hands healthy. You want to keep them flexible. That's the way you do it. Take care of your hands. Stretch. Don't overdo it. In the video, I stretch really far. And some people, if they try to do that the first time, that you'll break your finger in half. I don't want you to do that. You know your limits, and that's what you need to pay attention to. But those types of stretches and kind of getting your hands ready to play are going to help you a lot. All right, so let's talk about the actual, after you warm up, the first practice session I recommend for most people is a technique session. Now, if you're a guy that just wants to strum Conway Twitty songs on his front porch, you don't need a technique session probably. But if you're somebody who wants to develop and be some Conway Twitty songs might be difficult to play. I'm not very familiar with them. Anyway, but what I mean is if you want to challenge yourself and you want to learn new techniques, or if you want to be a guitar virtuoso or whatever, you're going to have to work out the technical side of the guitar. And the good time to do that is in the very beginning because it helps warm you up as well. So I usually start my own personal practice session after I'm warmed up with a technique session. Now I spend more time on technique sessions on like classical guitar because my technique, I know where my weaknesses are and I focus on those. And I noticed that when I improve the things that are weak in my playing, the things that were strong to begin with become even stronger. So everything you practice in technique is going to help something else. So when I'm practicing, if I was going to practice alternate picking, it helps my rhythm playing. It helps my overall coordination on the guitar. So that is what we're trying to get to. But I always try to not practice the same, like, oh, I've got this lick mastered. I'm going to play this kind of blues lick in 12th position that I've played since I was 10 years old. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to practice things that are different to my hands, and they're going to challenge me. And that is the stuff that's going to make your playing grow. It's going to require your brain to rewire itself all the time and add new skills. And those new skills are going to improve the ones you had before. So really think about challenging yourself and coming up with cool things. Now I'm going to talk about technical hurdles in a bit and how I approach those. But that's one of the things. You start with a technique session. It could be 20, 30 minutes. It could be 5 minutes, depending on how much time you have. Take something that's challenging you and try to break it down and learn how to get it into your hands, which I'm going to talk about in a second. All right. Now, another thing that I want you to focus on is find ways to make the guitar easier, not more difficult. think, especially in the YouTube age, or not just the YouTube age, but just any any genre, we tend to think that the best guitar players are the ones that are having the hardest time doing it. You know, they play the fastest licks and they got all stuff. But here's the key: all of those guys that are playing, when you see Yngwie Malmsteen or Steve Vai or Joe Satriani or Joe Bonamassa, Stevie Ray Vaughan, um, Jimmy, these guys that are great virtuosos of the instrument, it's easy to them. The licks that you're watching them play are extremely easy to them. Um, and the way it is because they learned it properly. And they know, just, I don't know if they know this or not, but their brain kind of put the stuff together correctly. And that's what I'm talking about. When you're learning technique, you got to know how to learn technique. So, but it's the little things like not trying to overly challenge. Don't make the guitar harder than it is. Like if I was going to play like this little piece from this little Joe Satriani, which is called Tears in the Rain, which I've done before. I've taught before on the site. You can find that. Now those chords are crazy. Now would I want to grab those all at once? Probably not, because I don't have to, because it's an arpeggiated piece. I can play it like this. When I go to the next chord, I don't need every note at the same time. I place them down as I get through the chord. So I'll do that transition again slowly. Now that might seem, oh, that's difficult. You're kind of having to time how your fingers come down. It makes it much, much easier as soon as you get used to it. I call it walking into chords. Now you can't do that in all forms of music, but in your arpeggiated stuff you can. And it's a very popular technique for classical guitar players, how they make their playing so smooth when they do chord changes. If they don't have to have all the notes down in the hand at once, they don't have to. The idea is to make it easy, not make it more difficult for no reason. All right, so that's what I want you to focus on. So let's take a little bit away from technique talk real quick. Let's talk about theory in ear training. Now, the way I do theory in ear training, like I have my theory in ear training course that I'm developing right now, and some of the chapters are already live in my premium section on my website, guitarlessons365.com. I don't believe in learning theory by itself, like out of a book. I think ear training should always go with it. There's no reason to know how to spell a major scale if you don't actually know how to hear a major scale and how it's played on the guitar and how you, and kind of putting your ear together with the theory. So that is what I think is very important that you do. So even if you're doing my course or you're just doing it on your own, it's very important to do them together. All right, because they both don't really mean anything separate. You should learn them at the same time. So when you're doing the theory in ear training, eventually you'll get to transcribing music. And there's different ways of transcribing music. If I'm going to transcribe a Metallica song, I do it differently than if I'm transcribing a Bach piece. You know, if I'm doing Metallica, that music is based more stylistic and it's based off of intuition a lot. And I know the guy's style. I know the chord shapes that they learn, that they play. When Kirk Hammett's doing a solo, I know a lot of the scale types that he plays and the kind of the licks that he uses. So I rely more on that than probably my actual ear. But when I'm transcribing something like Bach, I don't even have a guitar in my hands. I'm listening to it, little section, listen to it again, get it in my ear, and then I transcribe it with my mind because that's really kind of what it's more suited for, that style of music. So it really depends on what you're transcribing, all right? It's not all just done one way. So now after you do that transcribing, I think you should improvise. I have improvisation courses for blues, metal, rock, just generating more and more all the time. And what it does is it takes those ideas that you learn, your theory and your training, and actively applies them to creating something with it. So improvisation can mean improvising over a backing track or just being actively creative with the stuff that you just learned. So you spent 15 minutes doing theory in ear training, spend 15 minutes now applying that, immediately applying it. Because if you don't apply it, it goes away. All right? So Then, if you're somebody who wants to write something, spend 10 minutes writing something, even just a little guitar lick, or a chord progression, or a melody. These things develop to where you might want to spend more time on writing if that's something that you really want to be known for. But that's what I'm talking about. Get to that point to where it feels comfortable just being creative every day.